Canadians are rightly fed up. It is my view and the view of the FMCS that the parties are at an impasse. I have asked the Canada Industrial Relations Board if they also determine that there is an impasse.
The BCGEU says it has issued a 72-hour strike notice for more than 34,000 public sector workers, and job action could start as early as Tuesday morning. Now, members have been voting since the middle of August up until noon today after reaching an impasse with the province's public service agency last month. The last collective agreement expired at the end of March, but negotiations have been ongoing since the beginning of the year. A spokesperson for the union says the government's latest offer doesn't address the affordability challenges affecting its workers.
Here's the situation. 34,000 provincial government workers in British Columbia have delivered a strike notice. And get this, 92% of them backed it. That's not a slim majority. That's a tidal wave of frustration. When I saw that number, I had to double-check, because that's near unanimous rage.
CTV's Martin McMahon is following the story. He joins us live from the BCGEU office in Burnaby. Martin, an overwhelming show of support from the union's members for this strike vote.
Mijung, 92.7% of these BCGEU members have authorized their union to go ahead with the strike if they see fit. And at the core of all of this is what they're calling an affordability crisis for their lowest paid members. Wildland firefighters are among those the BCGEU suggests are an underpaid group, making an average of $28 an hour for a job that comes with incredible risks. But it goes beyond that, with 34,000 members in a range of areas from social work to jobs in government liquor stores.
That's not just a win. That's a landslide. The kind of result you expect when a room full of 5-year-olds vote on extra recess, not when thousands of adults weigh in on labor action. In politics, in unions, anywhere decisions get messy, numbers that high only show up when something is seriously broken.
Frontline workers in the civil service are being squeezed. About 50% of our membership are living paycheck to paycheck. 22% of our membership report that they're working a second or a third job.
The BCGEU represents a wide array of public service workers that includes wildfire fighters, correctional officers, liquor distribution staff, and more.
So, Michelle, what comes next?
So come Tuesday, if no agreement is reached, it's still unclear of what exactly this strike action would look like. The union says it's not releasing details about the job action until that time comes.
We will be reaching out to our members potentially impacted. And we think, our message is clear to British Columbians. If you see a picket line, do not cross that picket line.
Think about it. Firefighters, social workers, clerical staff, people running government liquor stores, they're all banding together saying they can't afford to live where they work. And it's not some vague complaint. It's literally rent, groceries, fuel, the basics. I read that wildfire fighters, people who walk straight into burning forests, while the rest of us are Googling, how bad is wildfire smoke for my lungs, are making about $28 an hour for a job that could kill them. You can't even get someone to babysit your kids for that rate anymore. Watch what I mean. Try hiring a teenager in the summer for yard work. They'll look you in the face and say, $28? Nah, I've got a TikTok brand deal that pays me double.
Hundreds of BC workers, family, and friends celebrating Labor Day Monday. Around 60 unions set up booths at this Burnaby Park to educate visitors about workers' rights.
Workers know that it's getting harder every day to afford the rent, it's getting harder every day to put food on the table, and when they go to the bargaining table, they're expecting a fair deal.
These unions say there has been an uptake in strike action across the country and a growing importance to protect the fundamental right to strike.
Unfortunately, what we've seen again and again, especially at the federal level, whether it be with postal workers or dock workers or flight attendants, is that's not what we're getting, right? We're getting government interference, and that's really got to stop.
The event comes a day before thousands of public service workers with the BC General Employees Union are set to walk off the job after negotiations with the province public service agency broke off in July.
We are going to be supporting the BCG workers. They need a fair deal, and we get it if we all stand together in solidarity.
And now, services we all take for granted are dangling by a thread. Imagine lining up at a liquor store in BC, which, by the way, is practically a national pastime out there, and finding out the clerks have walked off. You're already stressed from the wildfire smoke, and now you can't even buy your wine? That's when Canadians really lose it.
Well, actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that, and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector, we'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence, what we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive.
But it's bigger than liquor. Social workers, the people keeping vulnerable kids safe, could be out. Firefighters, the ones running toward flames, could be out. Clerical staff, the ones making government even remotely functional, could be out. And all of this during peak travel chaos when airports and ferries are already bursting at the seams. Vancouver International is moving 90,000 people in a single day. Ferries are up 50% above normal, and that's before a single picket line even touched the pavement.
Taking strike action is incredibly difficult, and it really is the last resort here. We would much prefer to get a good deal and to see everyone at work, but the reality is that what government's offering, it's pushing people past the breaking point.
What do we want? COLA! When do we want it? Now!
The BCGEU represents more than 34,000 public servants, including wildland firefighters, social workers, correctional officers, and administrative staff.
They need to amend their approach and ensure that the people who work hard to keep this province running aren't left behind.
He wouldn't say what that job action could look like. BC Labour Minister says she could not comment on the specifics of the negotiations.
We respect the right for unions for people to organize, to collectively bargain, and to take job action.
So I asked myself, what happens when the system is already stretched to its limits and then you pull thousands of workers out of it? Collapse. Pure collapse. Like piling one more suitcase on top of an already exploding luggage carousel, the thing just stops spinning.
There's no end in sight to a strike involving thousands of provincial government workers. In fact, at this point, the two sides aren't even negotiating. BC's finance minister yesterday said government representatives from the province and the BC Government Employees Union were meeting to explore opportunities to get back to the bargaining table. But the president of the union said it was unacceptable that the government wanted them back at the table without bringing an improved wage offer. The union represents more than 34,000 members in public service positions, including BC wildfire service workers, correctional officers and sheriffs, liquor and cannabis distribution employees, and administrative professionals. Not all of them have walked off the job. At this point, just over 2,000 members in civil service are walking the picket lines. But the union says job action may escalate if the government doesn't come back to the table with a better offer.
And here's where it gets wilder. This isn't just BC. Engineers, scientists, geoscientists, psychologists, people with jobs you can't exactly replace with a weekend Craigslist ad, they're also lining up behind strike votes. Teachers in Alberta and BC, prepping for strikes just as kids are heading back to school. Canada Post is simmering with disputes. Air Canada flight attendants literally defied a federal back-to-work order. When I saw that, I laughed, not because it's funny, but because it's such a Canadian moment. The government stands there wagging its finger saying, I order you to go back to work. And the workers are just like, nah, we're good. Like, what do you even do after that? You can't ground them all. They're the ones flying the planes.
I'm expected to say, stand down. I'm expected to direct you to go back to work. I'm expected to end this strike.
Flight attendants have been locked into a 10-year contract that expired in March, and for that reason, they say their wages have not kept up with the cost of living. Under the current pay structure with Air Canada, they are not paid for any work that occurs prior to an airplane taking off or after the airplane lands.
Until the wheels move, we are not paid. It could be hours, it could be minutes. Ultimately, over a span of a month, there's on average 35 hours that go unpaid.
And don't even get me started on universities. Enrollment from foreign students, which has basically been the financial lifeline for colleges, has collapsed. So programs are getting axed, staff are getting laid off, communities that depend on campuses are wobbling.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I mentioned 2 notable labor strikes, but we're really seeing this across the country. More recently, 1,000 Dalhousie University faculty association and professional staff are on the picket line due to a lockout right now. In British Columbia, one of the province's biggest public sector unions could be going on strike after members voted overwhelmingly backed in job action. Are you noticing an uptick in labor disputes in the past few years, and why do you think that is?
I think what's really been interesting, especially this year, is that it's not just about labor dispute that has been in upticks. It's also really positive labor movements as well. So as you said, there are job actions that are currently ongoing in BC in Dalhousie, but then also last week, there was an entirely new union that was created in Victoria that for the first time potentially now cover Uber and gig drivers, which is a hugely positive thing. Not to add the fact that the trade tension with the United States has meant that a lot of unions that represent auto workers and steel workers, an example, have had to work very proactively with employers. And so what I will say is that this year, in addition to all of the job disruptions, we have seen labor movements in general have a revival, if you will.
And that's another piece of this bigger picture. It's not one strike, one dispute. It's like Canada is standing on one of those wobbly folding tables. You know, the kind that collapses if you lean on it even a little too hard. Every new strike is someone dropping another stack of books on top, and I'm just sitting here waiting for the legs to give out.
What do we want? Fair wages!
Day 2 of the rotating 72-hour strike by more than 2,000 unionized government workers. The BCGEU and the NDP government, though, remain far apart on what constitutes fair wages.
We have not resumed negotiations. The government has so far refused to come back to the table with a revised wage mandate.
The BCGEU represents 34,000 government employees, including correctional officers, sheriffs, and wildfire fighters. The union is pushing for an 8.25% pay bump over 2 years, plus cost of living adjustments. It claims the province is offering less than half that. Finance Minister Brenda Bailey won't confirm what the government is offering, but she paints a tough financial picture.
We are in a time where economic circumstances have changed here in the province.
More bluntly, the BC government is $10 billion in the red, a record deficit that has forced a government hiring freeze and some layoffs.
So naturally, I wondered, how did we get here? Inflation has been hammering families for 2 straight years. Rent is through the roof, groceries feel like luxury items, fuel prices make you question whether you really need to drive anywhere. And wages? They've been crawling. Actually, crawling might be too generous. Crawling implies forward motion. Wages have been more like sitting in traffic behind a broken-down truck. No movement, just fumes. Now, here's the part where I was genuinely surprised. Mark Carney, the guy who's supposed to be this voice of calm leadership, the steady hand, the financial grown-up in the room, he's handling this like he's still talking to a boardroom of bankers. His big message? Deals should be made quietly behind closed doors. Really? That's what you've got? Because to workers, that doesn't sound like wisdom. That sounds like, we'll wait you out, you'll lose energy, and eventually you'll take less. And when people can't afford rent or food, that kind of comment lands like a slap in the face.
Their number 1 issue is tariffs, and their number 2 issue is access to temporary foreign workers. Okay? For the moment,
it's a great request of the Quebec government and a big demand of the Quebec companies. But we have to keep this program, but eliminate this program. But we can, what's clear, and we can improve the total together.
As a whole, it's clear that we can improve our overall...
I saw someone comment online about him saying, he's starting to look less like a leader and more like a detached banker. And honestly, I couldn't even argue with that. Imagine you're drowning, you're waving your arms, and someone on shore says, "Don't worry, we'll form a quiet committee to look at your concerns." That's not leadership. That's how you get people to stop listening altogether. Meanwhile, public safety is already cracking. 32 drownings in BC this year, most of them young men, many linked to alcohol or drugs. Doctors are saying these are preventable, but resources for prevention? Thin. Police in Richmond are warning about a new scam targeting Chinese-speaking residents. Schools in Langley are rushing to open 900 new student seats, but thousands more are years away. Every single one of these might look like a separate problem, but zoom out and it's all connected. It's a system at capacity, trembling under its own weight.
Public servants did not create this deficit.
The impasse could be a sign of things to come with other public sector unions, most of which have contracts that expire this year. There are just over 450,000 unionized public sector employees in BC, including teachers, nurses, and university staff. The Finance Ministry calculates that a 1% raise for all of those workers would cost taxpayers $419 million a year. One labor expert says government is in a tough spot, trying to maintain union support and balance the books.
The BC NDP is very sensitive on this issue because they're the party that are often painted as the kind of big spenders and, the ones who kind of cave to the public sector unions. Those workers want to be paid decently.
The Hospital Employees Union did reach a new framework deal with the province that includes an unspecified wage hike for more than 67,000 workers. But the BCGEU is slamming that deal, claiming the wage boost is below inflation and undermines its own fight.
And it's not just services and safety, it's political legitimacy. Because if 92% of workers are saying yes to strikes, that's not just about contracts. That's about trust, or lack of it. That's about whether people even believe the government cares or listens. And history tells us, once that belief cracks, it doesn't stop at the bargaining table. It shows up at the ballot box. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is this just Canada being Canada? Slow-moving, bureaucratic, a little clunky? But here's the part that stings. Look south of the border. In the US, wages are climbing. Energy projects are booming. There's a sense of momentum. Workers actually feel like they're gaining ground. And whatever you think about American politics, that contrast is jarring. Canadians are staring at that and wondering why we're stuck in quicksand while the neighbors are pouring concrete.
It's a day to celebrate the labor movement's wins, but it hasn't been an easy year.
We're facing job losses because of the trade war. Cost of living continues to go up and people are feeling squeezed by that.
Those conditions have spurred more strikes, labor action this country hasn't seen in decades. That has also led to more government intervention.
Bonjour tout le monde.
With the federal Liberals ordering striking employees back to work over and over.
A number of decisions that the Prime Minister has made has put him in a very difficult relationship with workers.
So yeah, what Ottawa fears most isn't just one strike. It's the domino effect. It's that anger over paychecks morphing into anger at politicians, into anger at the system itself. Because once workers stop believing, they don't just walk out of their jobs, they walk out of the voting booth too. Or they walk in and cast a ballot that completely flips the table. I keep coming back to this image. Carney wants to project calm authority, but every week he looks more like the guy holding the steering wheel of a car that's already skidding on black ice. He's trying to smile while the tires are spinning. And honestly, I can't tell if he knows the crash is coming or if he's just hoping the ice will melt before we hit the ditch.
The other side of the labor dispute this morning, we're joined live by Canada Post spokesperson John Hamilton. John, you just heard the critique there from the Cup W representative. How does Canada Post respond to that, the suggestions that Canada Post, I heard some pretty nasty language about how Canada Post negotiates in this last, I suppose, year and a half or so.
Well, I think any language like that is unfortunate, but just spells exactly why the impasse has continued as we've tried to make moves forward so that we could start to address the challenges we face and deliver 7 days a week in terms of parcels so that we could compete in the parcel e-commerce business.
And here's the uncomfortable part. Canada is not prepared for this kind of test. For 2 years, families have been under enormous pressure from inflation. Everyday costs like food, gas, and utilities climbed faster than wages, leaving many households struggling just to stay afloat. Housing has become completely out of reach for a huge portion of the population, with younger generations in particular locked out of home ownership and even affordable rentals. Universities are slashing programs, cutting staff, and reducing opportunities for students at a time when education should be opening doors, not closing them. Public services, from healthcare to transit, are stretched to the breaking point, with delays, shortages, and declining quality.
Well, the provincial government says it is ready to negotiate by strike action, but strike action by public service workers is expected to continue today. Members of the BC General Employees Union started walking off the job yesterday, and they warn that more pickets could be coming. Our Reagan Hasegawa is live in Surrey. Good morning, Reagan. And picketing will continue today, but where are the negotiations at right now?
Good morning, Carrie. The BC government has asked the BCGEU to return to the negotiating table, but it says it has no interest in doing so until it gets a higher wage offer. So for now, picket lines like this one here in the Guildford neighborhood outside of the ICBC office will continue.
Meanwhile, the government's main response has been limited to talking points, delays, and quiet deals made behind closed doors. That approach may keep things calm in the short term, but it cannot meet the scale of the crisis. People are frustrated, and the anger is real. When 92% of workers vote in favor of strikes, it's not a symbolic gesture, it's a clear warning. That number is a signal flashing brightly. Act now to address the problems or risk losing control entirely.
That includes Mark Carney's order to find 15% budget cuts in the federal civil service. Unions say job losses have already started.
Absolutely, we're preparing for the fight that's ahead.
In a statement, the Prime Minister's office says it's working with unions, building Canada strong, and workers are at the heart of this mission. Carney focused his campaign on supporting Canadian jobs.
He used us as a backdrop for photo ops, but now when the rubber hits the road, he's not there to actually protect workers. And lip service, the movement is done with lip service.
I keep asking myself, what happens if this doesn't get fixed? What happens if these strikes keep stacking up and nothing changes? I can't shake the thought that the system can only absorb so much before it either bends and finds a way back or it snaps completely. And if it snaps, there won't be any speech, no carefully crafted statement, no quiet negotiation behind closed doors that will be able to patch it back together. That's the fear I carry when I watch what's unfolding. It feels like I'm standing there, staring at a table that's shaking on weak legs, and I'm waiting to see whether it steadies itself or crashes to the ground. And what unsettles me most is how casual everything still looks on the surface, as if the people responsible don't see how unstable it's becoming.
There is growing pushback, like Air Canada's flight attendants' recent choice to defy Ottawa's back-to-work order. Moves like that show Labour is at a turning point, this expert says.
That could set a new precedent for other unions to continue to fight, but it also is going to push the federal government to find other ways to order workers back to work.
I wonder if anyone in Ottawa actually realizes how close things are to giving out. It's one thing to talk about compromise, patience, and process, but when you're on the ground watching services slow down, watching frustration spread, you can see the cracks forming. It doesn't feel like a distant risk. It feels present, immediate. I don't want to exaggerate, but I also don't want to ignore what feels obvious. Every strike, every delay, every failed round of talks adds more pressure. And the pressure doesn't just disappear on its own. I feel like I'm watching momentum build toward a breaking point, and I don't know if those who are supposed to lead see it with the same urgency. So I'm left with this uneasy sense of waiting to see if the country can rebalance itself, or waiting for the moment when the legs finally give out. If you enjoyed leaving a like and subscribing, more videos are on the screen now.